Folks, welcome on back once again with old Josh here for another fantastic edition of Traders Talk, our weekly Q&A workshop we conduct not every Tuesday now, but every Monday here at this point at 12 o'clock Eastern. Great to have all of our students and members alike joining us right now. I see Chuck, Kathleen, Brad, Stephen, Michael, Leda, got Grant, got John, got Philip here. Got two Phillips. Actually got two Dannys with us here. Great to have all of our students and members alike joining us right now. This ASTS trade perhaps making a bit of a lower high right now. This might be the signal to get out on the second half of this position I'm in. But great to have all of us back, though, otherwise, at least on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the work. Always like to post this here, just lower left here coming up at Cyber Trading U. You'll see that popping up on the lower left, maybe a little background noise for this edition of Traders Talk. But be a friend, tell a friend that we got a YouTube channel here at Cyber Trading U, especially at the end of this workshop. If you wanted to join us inside our live trading room, just scan that QR code on the top left of the stream with your phone, with your camera. You'll be good to go. But you know what? Closing times. It's out. Get the hell out on this thing. Chuck them out. I just closed out on the bid. Why? Well, we milked this thing for as much as we could from earlier. This is not our first trade on the stock today. And this has honestly been one of the crazier Mondays that I have been a part of in the 10 years with CTU. Really. So there's a lot to digest. There's a lot to go over, not just on this thing, but on plenty more. If this comes back up on me, that's fine. I'll try and even re-enter if it gives me a chance. If not, then so be it. We did well enough on this move. So really quick, Joyce, Phil, Brian, Lawrence, Chuck, otherwise, and Tim. All right, so let's hop into this move here. So ASTS, why, how, when, where, everything in between. So ASTS was not a stock on the morning watch list today, on the morning list. It's a stock, obviously, from this past week that has been in just an ATM machine, an absolute machine here, breaking. And actually, we learned in our phase 2 course curriculum just earlier today, we learned that this stock was breaking all-time highs. So again, the phase 2 stock course we're conducting this week today and on Friday, end of this week. But we talked about historical charting, just that class there, class 5. So you could at least see that this stock was actually breaking all-time highs from last week, and it's actually at the all-time high right now. This might look to eventually break new higher later on. But, it was for that reason that I was interested in the stock again. Generally speaking, that was the reason why. Let me ask our students here in chat right now, a little pop quiz from phase 1 and phase 2 just from before, especially Chuck, Danny, Tim, Phil, Grant, all of us here in chat, and that have been students for a little while now. If I'm going to buy a stock, if I'm going to look to buy a stock, get into a trade, hit the buy button right here, my best entries to buy a stock are directly after what? I want you to finish that sentence for me there if you can. My best entries to buy a stock are directly after what? That's a pretty straightforward line, right? Sam, great to see Sam with us here, and Charlene abbreviating it pretty much. After it breaks through a big level on the way up, right? I'm actually in teacher mode, as I said previously here. So we got it here. Do I have the PowerPoint? I got it here. Come on. A little free game for all of us on YouTube. This is actually part of our PowerPoint, part of our main curriculum, actually. But my best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. I don't change that line ever. So question is, where is there a big level? You see lines on this chart, folks? I didn't get in at first off of any of these lines. I mean, it dropped down to 30 here in pre-market at 5 in the morning. I was sleeping. So where do we have a big level on ASTS? We're going to be able to answer that with Bookmap actually here. Give me a quick sec because otherwise I'll show you this here on level 4. And actually, I'll just get this out here for all of us in chat. But otherwise, where do we see a big dot? Where do we see a big ball, a big dot on the heat map here? Looking at this page, where do we see a big spike on that CVP column? What do we got here, folks? Ryan says 31.44. So Phil kind of like agreeing there. That's kind of like just don't focus on the orange box there as much, but generally speaking, it's like near there, right? It's kind of near there. So this area here, you can see it's at 31.36, but it says volume there, right? Volume. That's what I'm focused on. So the price. But at the end of the day on, I think this was Thursday's trading, we saw, or Wednesday's trading maybe otherwise, we saw an 842,000 share transaction go off. A big print that came in on the tape. Print as in PRINT, S, not Prince, right? I got a speech impediment. So, Prince, as in printed on the time and sales window. We're going to cover that in our phase 1 class next month. Do a little bit of that in phase 2 coming up probably by the end of the day today. But it's to say at least that creates a big level for us to work with. I'm not texting anyone right now, folks, just so you know. I'm breaking out the old calculator. So 842,794 times $31.36. You could see that there in the webcam right there. What does that say? 26 mil, 26.4 mil. So, hey, who's doing what at that price? Do we know? We don't. If we did, we wouldn't be on a YouTube stream right now, right? You and I wouldn't be. Come on. If we knew what was happening there right away, we wouldn't be doing classes, right? Now, what that means is that doesn't just mean to buy. It's easy to say, well, it took off here afterwards and it popped today. Yeah, but it's to say that this just simply creates a big level for us to work with for the next trading day. So I think on Friday, this was, well, yeah, it took off at first, but then look what happened. Unfortunately, this didn't hold support here, right? I mean, for as much as it broke over that level and ran, you would figure for resistance to become support. It didn't. It didn't. It held under it well. Maybe in the afternoon it tried and failed, got weak. So that didn't play out as a key level, at least as much on Friday's trading. But this at least brings us back to this dot and like what it means and at least who's doing what there. We don't have that answer as far as who's doing what, at least right away. But we have to ask, okay, well, what color is that dot? What color is that ball, that dot? It's green. So what do we denominate green as? What do we nickname? What's the nickname for green in our time and sales classes? Larry says, it's institutional investors. Well, I cover it more in the actual classes, but case in point, like, yeah, you're right, like to a degree. It's big traders, right? It's big money, right? So that's what we're kind of thinking of it as. But even further, what do we nickname green as? Buying. That's the nickname we give to green. That's the nickname. The full legal name, though, is at the ask. That's the full legal at birth name. Like my nickname is Josh, Ace of Trade. I got a couple other nicknames there too. But full birth name is Joshua Max Levitan, right? So here, did this become that big buying level? Well, yeah, first it did. But once again, we just came off class. I'm going to be phase 1 again here. But for Brian, Chuck, Joyce, Phil, Danny, all of our students, actually, when a stock breaks over resistance and it runs, resistance flips into what? Flips right into support. So it should at least. That's where it didn't, and it failed. So you don't want to catch a falling knife. Obviously, it didn't play out the way that you wanted it to on Friday. Just because it didn't play out the way you wanted it to on Friday doesn't mean it's not going to play out that way over time, right? It's the joke I say now, right? Like it's the President Bush line that he messed up years back, long time ago at this point. But, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. All right, well, my version of that is fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times again, maybe even a 4th time. But eventually you got to realize it's not for you. Now, what I mean by that is, hey, this could have flipped into support here. It just didn't. It's not to say that it can't coming up. So by the time the market opened up this morning, I already had that level on my own chart going into the day. This was more of a simple kind of break over the level for me. The only thing I will say is that like for students here that I'm like part of our trading room right now, I slightly broke the 5-minute rule. I rarely like to break the 5-minute rule, but with this, it pulled back. It was holding well under it basically for a bit. And it popped back above. It was like over here almost as it was pushing back up towards. So it was like about 30, 45 seconds before 9:35. And I took my first entry on this trade, ran it up a little bit at the time. And this provided the first of a few entries on this trade for me. So I want to go over this in full, but I want to go over at least why I was looking at this. Obviously, it was moving from last week. That's why we were looking at it. But if this just tanked right here and completely fell off, then I would have been focused on another stock. I would have been looking elsewhere at that time. Well, I was looking elsewhere, but I would have been even more looking elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like I can't short this stock really. So unless it made this move, I was probably going to move on. So I was looking for it to break under and over. And thankfully it caused that opportunity or gave me that opportunity and led to a pretty good squeeze at the time. Now I want to jump around a little bit because easy to say in hindsight, this kept going up, right? Kept going up, 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 up. I'm gonna go over a couple of other trades I took on the stock. So I took smaller money on this trade. I got like 75 cents on the first trade that I took from there, and I wish I held on the whole way through. Captain Hindsight comment there, right? Well, I'll say that about this stock as well. And I want to jump to this one next here because for as well as ASTS did, the ALZN was the best trade of the day. It was up like 600% at one point, just in one sitting. I left a fortune on the table on this stock. I got out way too early on this trade in terms of time, not in terms of price and how much I was up on the stock. Because this is where I'll kind of mention to students like Dominic and Gerhard and Larry and Sam and all of us here otherwise. If you're up a certain amount of money, we'll say money. If you're up a certain amount of money on a trade, dollar-wise, you're probably more keen to get out. Like if you're not normally up, let's say $1,000 on a trade and you're up $1,000 on this trade, would you want to give a good chunk of that back? No, you'd feel pretty crappy about yourself, right? You'd be more keen to take the profit. And certainly the furthermore it gets, the more money you're actually up on a trade, right? So everyone has their own like tolerance level and eventually everyone messes it up. You can't always be perfect, right? That's where I said to students just before Traders Talk started, for new members here joining us in chat, we're here to show imperfections. We're not here to blow smoke up your butt and show you perfect trades every time. If so, that's like a golfer shooting a hole in one on every course. And like, come on, like no one's perfect like that. No, you're just making it up. So it's to say at least that sometimes we can be, but more often than not, we're just trying to take enough meat off the bone to fill ourselves up. Here on this trade, this had popped up without me at first. I was trying to get a pullback here, like around these candles to 750, and it just wouldn't. And it ended up making a very unique move. I want to see if I could split this into a 15-second chart. I rarely go into a 15-second. Yeah, look at this. Okay. I think this is what I'm going to show. Is this doesn't even show it here as much. It's more on Bookmap probably. But basically, this stock was seconds away from getting halted, and it didn't, right? And we saw that actually last week where a couple stocks tanked. But eventually, this thing just kept going. It was right. Yes, this is it. Perfect. Perfect. So this was the sequence where this stock was about to get halted on the way up. Flat, 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 and then it just dropped. I'm like, oh, shoot, is this really going to like pull back here now? Because last week we saw a couple of anomalies as well. We saw a couple stocks look like they were about to get halted going up, and then they just collapsed. It was brutal, like bad shakeouts, like bad stuff. And it actually happened here initially where it pulled back. I'm like, oh, shit, no way. Same thing's going to happen again. It didn't, right? So it ended up squeezing back up. And on the pop up here, I jumped in right away because I figured, okay, if it's not going to tank at that point, if it does try and inch up again, that's where there's a better chance it's going to get that uphold. So I did something I normally don't do, and I just jumped in once it broke higher, just like, not to say with reckless abandon. I had a pretty strong feel that it would get halted in my direction at this stage, but there was a risk behind it. And it's not my normal like cup of tea type of trade that I would normally take. So thankfully it paid off. This was on half size here on the ALZN, but this was, what took my attention away a little bit from the other stocks. And well, at this point, once it reopened up, I got out on this trade. Like it was right over 10 bucks. I got out on this at. It was like a pop and drop. I was like, yeah, here I just got out. It was like at 10:03 or 10:05. And this just kept going up more and more and more and more and more and more. And I mean, so again, we didn't, get everything off the bone as much as we could have on this trade. This could have been a life-changing trade, honestly, for myself or a few of us here in our room. But just to say, I was up enough where I said, okay, you know what? Not every stock reverses exactly at 10:15, 10:30 Eastern time. Not every stock does. Some stocks reverse before then. This actually technically reversed before then, but I said the hell with it. I got out at like 10:05. So going in from 8:25 or 8:27, entering out at 10:03, 10:05, that was a hearty enough profit where I felt just good enough to take off the table, right? I'm not trying to scalp, but I'm just trying to, again, like the phrase I'll put it as is like, maybe it's because I didn't eat my breakfast yet. That's why. You're just trying to take enough meat off the bone to fill yourself up at the end of the meal, right? If you leave a little bit of food on the plate, don't feel so upset about yourself if you're satisfied anyway. Now, really quick, just a couple questions from chat right now, a couple questions from YouTube as well. I want to keep going with ALZN, and I also want to jump back to ASTS because that was the first of like 3 trades I took on the ASTS from just before. So Larry saying, does level 3 show support where that fell to? That was just from a little earlier. Was that on the ASTS there, Larry, you're asking about? Level 3, where does that show support? He's saying yes. I'll get to that in a bit. I'll jump back to ASTS there for you later on. Where do you get the level 4? So level 4 is Bookmap. Bookmap, top right there, BOOKMAP. You can go directly to their website, but we actually offer a very small discount through CTU. You could email Fausto for that. Fausto P at ctucorp.com. I know he's on vacation, but actually we auto route an email from there if you send him an email. So we'll send you an email back with a promotional rate. But I will say Thinkorswim also has a built-in version. So that's also very helpful. We'll talk to you more about that, though, once you onboard as a gold student, Gerhard. We always set our students up once you join our classes just with where to get Bookmap, where to get TradeStation data, where to get Book Viewer, everything else otherwise. And where to get Benzinga and everything else there, too. So Larry says that ALZN move was mostly in pre-market and no halts in pre-market, I don't think. Yeah, to jump back to this, well, the ALZN trade, larger move was after the open. But in pre-market, very good point from our trial member, Larry, because pre-market, there's no halts. One rule to trading halts, folks, and again, just in teacher mode right now, but break open our course calendar again, always like touting our classes. We just did a class on how to trade halts. That's one of the rules that we talk about very quickly. We don't harp too much on it because if you can't trade halts in pre-market, then there's nothing to go over. But that's the thing. You can't you don't get halted in pre-market unless if it's off of news. Unless if it's off of news or unless if like the actual exchange halts it, like NASDAQ or maybe the SEC could halt it. But a stock doesn't get halted from volatility in pre-market hours. So, all right. So I want to jump through this ALZN here. I left like a college tuition's worth of money on the table here, left like a fortune, moved all the way up towards psychological level here at 15. Why psychological level? Because we talk about the $5 incrementals, 10, 15, 25, blah, blah, blah. All right. So much so that look what became support on a pullback, $10. I don't know if it broke under and over, did it? Oh, it did. It did right there. Oh, you if you were looking for it, if you were trying to apply perfect strategy, actually a couple of times. Yeah, right here too. Okay, cool. Yeah, it looks like it broke under and over. Oh, that could have been a nice little entry there, I reckon. I didn't take that, obviously, but, resistance flipped into support at first. And from there, it led to a pretty good move up, $2.50 move up, at least for right now. So I'd say this move is pretty much finished, but that was your second wind type of trade where it caught a second wind. And it was off clean strategy, at least. But I think this trade's going to be cooked here coming up. Normally, stocks that are up 600% in one day tend to fall down pretty fast. So that's just my thought. All right. So that was pretty much the ALZN, at least as far as like, where it topped off at, the levels to work off of. Really quick, got one of us on YouTube right now. Wish I had your name there. You got double eye emoji out there right now, huh? It was like a Pokemon avatar right there. Well, ghastly. Saying long or short. So namely, we're focused on long opportunities. But that's to say, of course, if the stock is dropping off of bad news, if the markets are falling down, obviously, like eventually when we see a recession, like whenever that may be in a year or years down the line, like, we're going to find great shorts to work with. If the market dropped off the MPOX news, we would have done that. But because of the MPOX stuff that came around last week, we were just more focused on going long on stocks like VRAX, stocks like GOVX, stocks like SIGA here, SIGA. But, again, we'll look to definitely short stocks provided the right opportunity. For stocks that are trending up off of good news, eventually there's a time and a place to short, but there's more meat to take off the bone. I hate to be a vegetarian in this class right now. My apologies to you. I'm talking a lot of meat right now. So more meat to take off the bone, at least as far as going with the current trend of the stock, right? So that's all I'll say. All right. So Larry asking here quickly in chat, then we'll get to a couple questions otherwise, I did make sure we go through a few here. I think Lynn and Randy, I think Phil, Brian, a few of us here otherwise. Anything left in GOVX today? I don't like the stock. I really don't like the stock, right? It ran up well on Friday. It finally did well here. But before that, though, what was it up to? This thing was a static mess before that. Even the day before then, it was very messy, I think. This was the really choppy one up and down. This was the one where it was going to get halted here on the way up, and then it suddenly didn't, and then it just tanked out of nowhere. That never happened. So, this thing was a hot mess for a little while. And then, you know what? It had a good day. It had a clean breakout or two, did well. But that doesn't mean that it's going to continue with that same personality. And what I mean by that is that doesn't mean it's not just going to continue to go up. If it was a choppy mess to begin with, there was a reason it was a choppy mess. And whenever this run stops, it's going to likely resume to be a choppy mess. And what I mean by that is, well, look what happened here in pre-market hours. It tried at 7 o'clock or 6:30. It tried, didn't get anywhere. And then look what happened. This is all before the market opened. It's a hot mess. Maybe if it could break resistance at 12, seemingly that could lead to a clean move. But 9:30, it dropped. It's a mess. It's going sideways. It's a mess. And here we are. So that's where I'm telling you that this stock is now resuming the same type of personality that it had back from a few days ago. Now, ASTS for reference, hey, this stock eventually is going to pull back down and really tank. I'm talking long term. Not every stock goes up, nearly 10x in a month and a half, 2 months time, right? What is it for May? 3 months time, whatever. But, just to mention, eventually this is going to tank, right? When it first was popping, even on these candles here where it was moving up and popping, it wasn't really as choppy on a consistent matter compared to what you're seeing on GovX. So hell, if GovX pops up to $35 over time, so be it. But just realize that if it's choppy before, there's a very good chance it could be choppy again. And that's what my mind goes to, at least after a run up. After a run up, it's not even to say it's going to drop. It's to say it's going to resume its personality, right? All right, let me just make sure I didn't skip over anyone there really quick. So from Larry, that was on the ASTS, right? From before with level 3. Does level 3 show support for where that fell down to? So let's jump back to ASTS, and then I'll kind of just keep going through this trade as far as kind of seeing. I'm doing a live webcam right now. No, I'm doing a live webcam right now. You good? Yeah, yep, you're good. You're good. Yep. All right. So with that said, really briefly, ASTS ended up making a continued move up higher later on. Well, where was the next entry on this? We're going to get to this in just a bit. A couple of maintenance issues here in the Levitan compound today, so going through right now. All right, let's see what we could work with here. And I'll show you where I jumped back in on this trade later on, at least, where this fell down to. Now, can level 3 answer this question? Yeah, but not every stock bounces from an iceberg level that's sticking out there in advance. A lot do. Not all of them have an iceberg on the bid that allow a clean bounce, So what I'm looking for is to see high volume getting filled off of a certain price level. Not just that, but it's more so to say, where do we have resistance getting broken above? So this will better serve the picture here. We had a resistance here up towards 32.50. Chart resistance wasn't like an iceberg, but it pulled back. So, figure that could be resistance. It spiked up there as soon as the market opened up on minute 1 and pulled back. We had an order here over time. So once this broke over this order as resistance, it was at this point, well, it ran up, but I was looking for this flip. I was looking for the flipping of this from resistance to support. So this ran up without me at this point on this trade because I was in from 31.35 or so just on that first entry I had. And I got like 75, 80 cents on it, which was nice. But again, I was focused on other stocks, maybe another entry on this if it provides the chance. It did. But I took it from a little higher level here off 32.50. It was pre-market resistance from the chart. We had iceberg here, it looks like darker orange line. So for the buying that came in, I thought that this resistance could be support. And then on the pullback here, it just took a little bit. So this is where I'll say, on a smaller size position, I'm allowed to have a little bit wider of a cushion compared to doing a lot of shares. This is a category 5 stock. We went over this in phase 1 last week where it's not even price, but it's volatility. There are some $31 stocks I'll do 500 shares on. Where are you? Right next to you. PLTR, 500 shares, I do this, not to say like easily on, but like I'm a lot more comfortable trading larger size on a stock I have consistently performed better on. This stock, I had like a couple of good trades on like the run up within the last few months, but like, this is Fausto's bread and butter. And like, it's definitely something I know of, but it's not something I know of to the degree of PLTR. It's also faster than PLTR. This is also much faster, much more volatile. It has like smaller orders, larger spread. So I just simply thought that we could see this flip. So I was going to do this on smaller size. So I started this trade off, this next one off on 100 shares. It took a little bit because I got in here at this point under and over. I felt clean with the entry, but then it like shook around a bit. I thought I was going to get stopped out here, and thankfully I didn't. So on smaller size, I gave myself a larger cushion there pretty much, and it held back above the VWAP. I felt better about it here. This wasn't up 600%, at least in one day, like the ALZN. So I felt a little bit better about using Cyberclock here to my advantage in the run up here at this point. So, I ended up holding on to part of this, or I held on to this position as I went into the class. Let me show you this here. So where are you? It was on this candle. Okay, it wasn't on this one right away. So not so clean on the entry because it could have been better with the over aspect, under and over. But I still got the job done where it was 32.51. It held a higher low afterwards. And then from there, from that point, it led to the pop. But this is where I'll tell you, I ended up holding on to this position during the phase 2 class. I moved my stop up to where I think it was this low. Yeah, I think, or no. I think it was this low. This low. Yeah, 33.50. I set my stop underneath. And then from there, if it were to break under that, I'm making money. Right. So as being here long enough as an instructor, professional trader on top, I want to put it in a very delicate way because we have students joining us here where I don't want you to look at me, hold a position while I'm teaching a class for you to say, well, if he's doing it, I could do it. Folks, I've been pounding my head into a desk for 10 years, studying and micromanaging these trades with you and with former students, and been studying on my own ends. So unless if you're a more category 4 or 5 trader, I wouldn't suggest for you to be doing that. It's as simple as that. So as a new student, you absolutely should not be trading while you're in class, regardless of how it ends up. I'll always be a cheerleader, but I'll always be Josh, the instructor, first. So at least that's where I'll say, I felt comfortable with the consequences either way. And I didn't look at this stock as I taught the class. So, it's just to mention, as soon as the class finished up, well, I will, no. Time out. I'll yank my unleash there for a second. We went through this stock as we were teaching class. So as I saw this pop up, I naturally felt more confident with like, okay, we're making money on this, obviously, right? That's where that came from. So, at least as we were showing this in class, I knew that this was standing. So at least from here, it's moving up, testing all-time high right here. And at this point, I ended up beginning to take half the trade out at 36.94 or so. And then the second half, I just clocked out at just pretty much right here as it was shaking. So wanted to go over the ASTS here because, hey, something that we were talking about just before. There's a call out that we had. We're starting Traders Talk off with it. This was the all-time high, actually, just from yesterday, I reckon. So, it's clearly failing to break higher off this peak to create new, territory. So here at this point, I was thinking maybe it could. And on, well, what shape was it? This one here. I just got out on the second half of that trade. So, let me know if you have any questions, at least on this stock, the ASTS. Otherwise, and I want to jump to a couple of other questions that were sent in through private chat and sent in via email here otherwise there too. All right. So I think I may have answered this actually as I went through, but I want to answer from Brian. Good morning, Josh. Where was your entry on ASTS? Was looking for entry and missed it. That was from actually much, much earlier within the morning session. I didn't have a chance to answer that actually. So I think that's where I wanted to kind of start off with that. So there we go, Brian. Especially Brian, if you have any follow-ups on that, let me know. Really quick. This is from Phil here from private chat as well. He says he went through some of the phase 2 recordings on Sunday. We're going to get that coaching set up there, Phil. I'll talk to you just coming up after we finish up here. He says on setting stops, it would be nice to maybe show a setup having 2 level 2 screens side by side, showing that you have a set your stop limit order with an amount placed. then put in your buy order on the other level 2 screen. And after you place that purchase, immediately activate the second level 2 to set that stop order. Phil, I know what you mean. So basically just to have like one next to another. It's something that Fausto often does when he trades in the phase 3 class, right? So I will just mention, like, as far as that goes for future classes, I'll look to do that here and there. Absolutely. Like for Phil, he's a longtime student, and that's something that's easy for me to do in a future class. Absolutely will. I just want to make it known, just as far as this goes to everyone here, there are going to be slight differences between Fausto and me, right? We're different human beings. We're not identical twins. We're not even blood related, right? It's just to mention we are two separate human beings. He has trained me well enough, and I've gone through the classes on my own well enough, we'll just say. But there are slight differences. Like it's, again, comparing it to a cup of coffee. As much as we want the cup of coffee to be the exact same, that's within strategy. As far as like entry and exit, when it comes to having two level 2 screens here, it's really just simply like I'm quick when it comes to setting my stop order up. I've always used this for 10 years. So for me, I'm not going to change my own trading habits, right? At least when I'm mainly trading with students in coaching or mainly within the classes. Though coming up, I will say, just because of that request there, I will look to do that for the next one, Phil. What is that? Probably in September classes? October classes. October classes, setting stops, taking profits. I will make it a point to show two level 2 screens there for you. It's relatively straightforward where I do just use one to set a trade up with, but it's like I already have the stop limit order here already set up where I have the price and then I have the limit price set a few pennies under the stop. So all I'm doing is really just clicking buy and then just going to the other one and clicking sell. That's pretty much it. But I want to address that again. Absolutely. I will show that just distinctly in the phase 2 class for this October cycle. All right. Let's see. Let's keep going right now. I don't know if this is a question as much. I just saw a chat from Lynn and Randy here earlier. It's really brief. Read it myself. No sweat there, Lynn and Randy. Absolutely. And just stay in touch with John Romano, your education advisor. That goes for every one of our trial students here, trial members, nonetheless. I always like to say you're not an actual student until you go through phase 1. I put it that way because we really hold your hand the whole way through once you join us as a student. So like even the Cyber Group Plus membership comes with phase 1. I think those members and students really there that are like Cyber Group Plus, I think that you've kind of seen the night and day difference between what we do here versus what we do in the classes. There's a lot more A to Z in the classes that we provide. But that's where, at least as part of being a trial member, it's very beneficial to watch these recordings, these workshop recordings, I'll say, because we do them every week, right? All right, so let's keep going through, though. I want to go through just to see what else we got through email here. And then if there's no other questions that I got here, I'll keep it rolling just on some of the other stocks that we traded from earlier today. The VRAX trade, we ended up doing pretty well on. Yeah, let's go into VRAX at least here. VRAX. Pretty much same story. I mean, we're not going to do the halt as much here. It's easy to say this popped up that much more after. I got fortunate with the entry I had on the ALZN trade with getting in like right before it got halted, actually. But that's a very unique type of entry that I had with intent, and I'm lucky it paid off. But this type of trade here, unless if you got in off of $5 on the breakout or under, maybe you're in from 450 maybe, but if you're not in from 450 or 5 on the breakout here, then it's very tough to just jump in and just, try and expect it to move up higher after. Not only just because of this move here, but look at what it did in pre-market. This was as steady as can be in pre-market. So, hey, you know what? If it's as steady as can be in pre-market, maybe it could be as steady as can be here after some point. That's a thought, but otherwise, this is no good. Like, it's not a intelligible strategy to jump in here, at least at this point, unless if it showed the exact same pattern that the ALZN did. 5 would have been a great level if you were able to catch it in time from there. 450, obviously, even better. Let's go over this from pre-market, though. Let's go over pre-market move. It didn't really do as well after 8 o'clock, right? It just dumped off after 8 a.m., and that was pretty much it. but at least from here, it made a better move going into the 7 o'clock hour. So let's see, what do we got? Pull up bookmap here. I want to ask Chuck. I want to ask Kathleen, Barbara, Chris, all of our students here of CTU. Let's go before 7 o'clock. So I know a lot of us could trade pre-market at 7 o'clock. Thinkorswim or other brokers may open up then. For me in TradeStation, I'm at 8. So I have no problem getting the extra beauty sleep here. I need it. I definitely need it. So where do we got support resistance here on this trade, folks? If we're looking at the heat map, if we're looking at all of the, nuances, all the details behind this screen, behind this window here, where do we have a big level? There could be more than one answer. And Kathleen's saying here in chat at the same time, I'll get to this in just a bit, Kath, but she says, I find a lot of times when I put an order in ahead of time, the price gets within 1 cent of her order and backs off. Very annoying. Yeah, that happens to me, especially if I'm looking for like under and over on a support test. Have it go under and over, and like it just holds 1 or 2 pennies above and doesn't do what I want it to do. Like it just like holds above and makes a too perfect of a bounce, and I'm not in it. It's like, it's frustrating, right? So what do we got? Where do we have a big level here? Chuck saying 375 to 380. Chuck, you looking on the right side here? Right over here. Danny says 350. Joyce says 510. Well, 510 definitely is the easiest answer to see. Dark orange line that goes across the page. It's about 26,000 shares. It's out there for about 3.5 hours. It's a lot of time. So clearly that's a level. That's at 515, 516, or was it 510? 510. Sorry, 510. It's at 510. So great answer from Joyce and Barbara and Margaret. But I will say to Chuck, who had, I think, pointed this out, yeah, this area seems to be relatively good. This area, and namely this here, it's your largest spike, and there's a big drop off in the volume filled above it. So, this was pretty strong around $4. We had an iceberg order out there before, and this is at like 6:45, 6:46 in the morning. It broke over it. All right. Again, folks, really quick for us here in our trading room, you should know this. We go through this every week. We go through it. We just went over it before. But, when a stock is moving up and up and up and up, what type of pressure are we more so seeing? Buying pressure or selling pressure? What do we got? Same answer for what we were nicknaming green, right? Buying, right? We're seeing a lot of green. We're seeing a lot of buying for this stock to be moving up. Even as it pulls back, I'm just pointing out that, hey, for every time it's trying to nip over this level here, we're seeing more and more buying pressure. So that's the concept that you want to have here ultimately going into the 7 o'clock hour here. We had resistance at 4. The more times it nips and breaks over that level in a smaller time frame and a smaller concentration there, I'd feel better. So, hey, it broke below it. This is all before 7 a.m. Support becomes initially resistance. Shake around at first, but on the next test right here, it's breaking over it pretty quickly after the first one there, and it gives you a cleaner move. Not only does it give you a clean move, but yeah, this is like the type of trade where if you were looking for the support entry, this could have been tough because it just holds a penny above. You have a big fat iceberg here, and that's great to have. 103,000 share iceberg on the bid. That was at 385. And that likely showed on level 3, and here's level 4 to boot to show it here as well. But, at least by the time it broke over this level on the way up, right there, that's your sweet spot. And it's after 7 a.m., right? It's after 7 o'clock, right away after it breaks back through the level. Now, easy to say it ran afterwards. Captain Hindsight ran nice. It needs to hold over this. It's got to hold over 4. So it shakes down. If you're in this trade, like you're probably sweating it out here. Like you need this to hold over 4 if you're looking for a better run after, right? If this breaks below 4, who's to say that this can't hold, that this is going to hold as support? Maybe this order gets pulled. So that's where thankfully it does what you need it to do. But just to say this would have been a sweet spot to get the entry off on. And then thankfully gives you a better play after, right? Gives you what you want ultimately. Big move shortly after. You have resistance here at that 510, so that would have been a great target. It goes right up there. Perfect move up. So this likely would have been a great place for me to get out if I took this trade. I didn't saying if I took this trade. This is out there all morning. There's got to be a reason why that's out there. Does it go higher? Yeah. But hey, that's where I say if you're in the pre-market and you're up $1, maybe right around $1, 80 cents, 90 cents, $1, maybe even more on this trade, and you're not normally up 80, 90, $1 or more up on a, let's just put it bluntly, a pretty cheap stock, I'd say as good of a time as any to get out would be right here. Take the money and run. Because, yeah, it consolidates and moves up more later on, but that's where I could tell you there's another entry right here at like 490, right? And if you actually take a look in the chat board here, I want to see if this is the one. Give me a moment here. There was a stock earlier this morning I was kind of calling over and over and over as top heavy. It may have been the GovX trade, may have been GOVX, whatever. But, this stock at the time was becoming pretty damn top heavy. Most of the volume from this initial run was filled near the highs, becoming top heavy. So there's big danger in this dumping all the way back down. But what happens if it can break back over this level here? What happens if it can clear back above 5? What happens if it gets above 5 or above even this year, like a little 508? Easy to say it moved up later on, but that's what provides you the opportunity, right? That's what we have to realize beforehand. And that's what we try and accomplish here in Traders Talk each week. I'd say that is what we accomplish here in Traders Talk each week. The big thing, though, is for you to take these talking points and, learn from them here, but more so apply them towards your trades, even later on today, even tomorrow, later on throughout this week, right? The more that we kind of see the same patterns and concepts play out from stock to stock to stock, regardless if it's a large cap, small cap, medium cap, you name it, it gives you more confidence, right? So we dive much further into that in our curriculum, phases 1, 2, 3, dive into that a lot more extensively in our one-on-one coaching program, ASTS here. Let's take a look back on our friends. Feel pretty damn good getting out wherever the hell I did. I think it was right at 36.18, roughly around there, 36.15 or so. Yeah. All right. So, that was basically it. That was the VRAX trade in summation because, hey, broke above 5. That resistance, it even flipped into support after 8 o'clock. I guess this could have been a good entry, but just didn't give you what you wanted there and just kind of dragged down. So this actually presented a good entry here later on and much later on as well, right? Because the next time it made a stronger pierce back through this level, that's where I'm like saying to students, if you turned over to this trade and it was already at $6, you're not jumping into that, right? I know it popped higher later on, but if trading was that easy, right? You don't have the confidence to jump in here as much as you would from here. So that's where if someone was watching this trade, it was moving on up, inching around, and you're like, ooh, okay. Well, if it could break over $5 again, perhaps there's a case for it to at least make a big move shortly after. Maybe not expecting this to happen, but hey, if you can get a higher high later on, or maybe even a lower high just gets up to like here, all right, that's fine. But every trade begins with the entry. This actually was a great entry if someone was, watching it prior, they knew of the level prior, and that gives them the possibility to feel confident with taking that trade. But, again, it goes back to another trade from even last week. I want to show this once more. The GNLN trade. This was a hot mess after it made that initial run up. But this just took off right away with no prep time, right? This took off completely. So there's very little planning on a trade like this. It's very easy to leave money on the table, or not even that. It's very easy to not take this trade at all. And yeah, the more it goes up, the more you get frustrated. But the more that you look at this and say, well, you know what? He's kind of right. If we're trying to be strategic and methodical, process-oriented before we take a trade, you got to have a little breathing room. You got to see resistance flip into support. We got to know where our levels are. So, you know what? Hey, for VRAX, if someone was watching this here, they had the time. They broke over the level. It's a fast break, but every trade begins with the entry, and every entry begins with a big level. So, case in point, we're not going to be there to take every trade, but at least we want to give ourselves as much confidence to take each trade. We're not here to, play casino, right? A loss I had earlier today, I'll just mention really quick. Just here's a loss. This is just something I just didn't work out for me on 2 occasions. Clove. So 320 was a key level for me, 322 or 320-ish, just kind of together. So there were a couple of points where I thought it was going to pop and run right over here. Just prior to class beginning, it was testing, pop, went nowhere. Took a 4-cent loss pretty quick. And then even a little bit later on, this was like after class, but it was like kind of right before. It was right around this area here. As it ended up trying to re-break, I'm thinking the same move could happen where, all right, well, it recovered from this drop, big level, take the entry. When a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting that big move shortly after, that larger reaction. So, I'm not expecting a halt, not expecting to see what happened to VRAX there, but at least give me more than this. And if it's not going to give you more than this, it's like, all right, it's more likely to make a big move just the opposite direction. There's no point in holding on, right? So, just want to kind of finish off Traders Talk with that. We're going to finish up here in just a little bit, folks. Let me know if you have any last questions before we wrap up. Brian here in chat right now saying 510. So that was, Brian, you're talking about the VRAX? VRAX? He says yes. Okay, the 510 order was pulled at 7:02 in the morning. So does that level still count for a target to exit at 510? Yes. And actually, it's a good segue for me to just kind of mention, I teach this more in our classes again, like the discipline psychology class. Actually, you want to see where I have a little egg on my face here? I teach this in the discipline and psychology class. It's phase 2, lesson 1. But if anyone that knows how to spell, let me know, because I need classes on how to spell. Not disciple, discipline. I still haven't changed this. That's so weird. I thought I'd changed this there. Maybe I didn't save it. But yes, discussion on discipline, not disciple. But either way here, on the VRAX, answer is yes. But here's where I'm saying that we have to kind of think of ourselves like a 5-year-old or even like a 2-year-old. Sometimes we cry over spilt milk. Sometimes we take a huge profit, a lot of money that we normally feel very happy with, but the stock keeps moving up and up and up and up. And we're actually more concerned about leaving the money on the table, and we're crying over spilt milk. 2 years old. You can't be 2 years old. Let's be 6 years old. And what I mean by that is, well, here, for this order to be out there at 5:30 in the morning, even though it gets pulled at 7 o'clock or shortly after, for as long as that order is out there for, you have to put yourself in the shoes of like a 6-year-old or 5-year-old and be like, why? Why was that order out there? Why? And well, my answer to that is you have to still respect it, especially if it's out there as long as it has been. So it created great resistance at the time, but then it eventually broke higher, right? So it eventually moved off of it, but at first it created a resistance. So, that right there is where I say I have no problem being a 6-year-old, but you gotta not be a 2-year-old. All right, I think that's going to wrap things up, at least for us here for the time being. Let's just do a flyby right now before we finish up. ALZN's not going anywhere. The ASTS trade. Oh, look at that bounce. Oh, that's beautiful. That's something I was going to go over more in the phase 2 class later on today. I still will, but look at that. Just nabbed 35.01. So it didn't touch 35 or make my famed under and over, but I guess strong enough. Look at that. I mean, it's a direct hold off of that past resistance to be support. And, we'll see if it ends up breaking back up here later on today. Break all-time highs maybe later on. But, folks, all of us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., all of our social media streams and platforms here alike. Hope that you enjoyed. At Cyber Trading U, popping up on the lower left right there. Be a friend. Tell a friend that we got a YouTube channel here. We're going to be back tomorrow morning, at least with our morning meeting, at least tomorrow morning on YouTube. Stream live every morning. We do a workshop every Monday afternoon. I know Fausto's on vacation this week, so you got me in the mornings at least. But with that in mind, if you're interested in joining us inside our trading room, taking the next steps, We offer a week-long trial, $9. That's all it is to join us for full commentary throughout the day, audio commentary in the morning and afternoon. So scan the QR code with your phone, with your camera on the top left. Look forward to seeing you there. We need to refill up on water. And I'll tell you what, we finished up before my repair guy got back and started causing all sorts of damage and shit. So there we go, folks. Hope you enjoyed. We'll be back at least inside our live trading room later on today. Next audio broadcast there.